bring back in Camille Foster, co-host of the Fifth Column podcast. Camille, I want to get your reaction to this, but in particular, I want to get your reaction to the way that Joe Biden depicted the way that Black Americans think about cops and fear for their lives every night, every day, their kids going to the grocery store, et cetera. Do you think that's an accurate depiction of the nation?
Well, let me say a couple of things. I did mention earlier, but I'll reframe it here. The state has a monopoly on the legitimate use of force. That's police officers, the government has that. And it is appropriate for that reason to scrutinize the use of force by the state. It's important. It is uniquely problematic when civilians are killed in interactions with government agents. This is important to always keep at the forefront of our minds. I also think it's very important to keep things into perspective. And I think talking about people being perpetually afraid of being murdered on their way to the gas station or while they're shopping at the supermarket, effectively by members of law enforcement. That was the ostensible intimation on the part of the president during his remarks. And I just think that's absurd. I don't think people actually live in fear in that way. If we are, however, going to zoom in on a circumstance, we could take a look at the circumstance in Chicago. We could take a look at the Adam Toledo shooting, which a lot of people have been focusing on, and we could talk about the milieu that Adam Toledo comes out of. And that milieu is a city where 907 people have been shot since the beginning of this year. Those are war zone stats. We are talking about law enforcement, which is involved in a vanishingly small, relative to the number of interactions they have with civilians, number of shootings. Every one of those shootings matters. They're involved in some number of civilian deaths. Every one of those deaths matter. They all should be investigated impartially and thoughtfully, and we should pursue reforms to keep those numbers low. But if we're talking about these things in hyperbolic ways, and we're ignoring the actual circumstances that genuinely make people afraid to leave their houses in certain circumstances, the historic rises in murder rates in many cities in this country over the course of the last 12 months, in many respects connected directly to civil unrest that gripped the country during the wake of this, what's been described as a racial reckoning, I don't think we're being serious. We have to really scrutinize the forces that are at work here and the way that we're talking about race in this country. And I'm delighted to see some of the criminal justice reform efforts happen. I am very concerned about many of the ways that we're talking about race and the various cases in which it seems to be disconnected from the facts. There is, more than a year later, still no piece of evidence related to this particular case, the case of George Floyd being killed, that gives us an indication that if he were a white man and all other things were equal, he would be alive today. There just isn't. And that is absolutely critical for us to keep in mind.
And that's something that unfortunately I think our politicians are unfortunately unable to say, unable to come out and be honest about. Thank you so much, Camille, for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you, brother.